Imagine sitting by your window seat. The aircraft begins its descent. You look outside, and instead of seeing a runway, you see apartment buildings. Not hundreds of meters away, not even 50. Close enough to see people watching television. Close enough to make eye contact with someone hanging laundry. For a few terrifying seconds, it feels as if the aircraft is about to crash into the city. And yet, this happened every single day, for more than 70 years. Welcome to the story of the airport many pilots considered the world's most demanding, and why one perfectly successful landing could still feel like surviving a disaster. For decades, Cathay Airport was unlike any other airport on Earth. It handled millions of passengers. Some of the world's largest aircraft landed here daily, yet every approach demanded precision. One small mistake could have been catastrophic. So why was an international airport built in the middle of one of the world's most densely populated cities? Why did pilots willingly fly one of aviation's most intimidating approaches? And why did Hong Kong eventually abandon an airport that had become legendary? I've spent weeks reviewing historical records, aviation publications, and pilot accounts. In this documentary, we'll separate the facts from the myths and uncover the real story behind Cathay Airport. Cathay Airport began with an ambitious idea. In the early 1920s, two businessmen, Ho Kai and O Tak, planned to reclaim land from Hong Kong's harbor for a residential development. The project failed financially, but the reclaimed land remained. Instead of housing, the site found a new purpose. It became an airfield. By 1925, aircraft were already operating from the location. No one could have imagined that this modest strip of reclaimed land would eventually become one of the busiest airports in the world. As aviation expanded after World War II, so did Cathay. Passenger numbers exploded, larger aircraft arrived, and Hong Kong became one of Asia's most important international gateways. There was just one problem: the city kept growing too. Most airports are built away from dense urban areas. There is room for expansion, room for safety zones, room for longer runways. Cathay had none of those advantages. Mountains stood to one side. Victoria Harbour surrounded another. Apartment blocks expanded toward the airport from every direction. Every year there was less space, not more. By the 1980s, Cathay was handling far more traffic than its original designers ever imagined. Yet extending the runway wasn't practical. Relocating nearby neighborhoods wasn't realistic. The airport had become trapped, and that created one of aviation's greatest engineering challenges. How do you safely land a wide-body jet inside a city? The answer became famous around the world. Pilots gave it a nickname. Passengers rarely understood what was happening, but every captain approaching Cathay knew exactly what came next. A single visual marker on a hillside. One sharp turn, seconds from touchdown. Miss that turn, and there would be almost no time to recover. By the time a pilot reached Hong Kong, the hardest part of the journey was still ahead. Landing at Cathay wasn't just another instrument approach. It was a carefully choreographed sequence that demanded perfect timing. For runway 13, aircraft couldn't simply line up with the runway from miles away. Instead, they flew toward a giant red and white checkerboard painted on a hillside overlooking Kowloon. This wasn't decoration. It was a critical visual reference. Pilots would fly almost directly toward it. Then, at exactly the right moment, they had to make a steep right-hand turn. Not minutes before landing. Not even 1 minute. Just seconds before touchdown. From the cabin, passengers often had no idea what was happening. But in the cockpit, every movement mattered. For passengers seated near the windows, the experience could be unforgettable. As the aircraft banked toward the runway, the city seemed impossibly close. Apartment windows filled the view. Laundry hung from balconies. Television antennas stretched above rooftops. Some residents claimed they could recognize different airline liveries without leaving their apartments. The aircraft looked close enough to touch. In reality, the approach had been carefully calculated, but the margin for error was small. Strong crosswinds, heavy rain, or poor visibility could turn an already demanding landing into one of the most challenging approaches in commercial aviation. You've probably heard Kai Tak described as the most dangerous airport ever built. But that's not entirely true. It was certainly one of the most demanding. Yet demanding doesn't necessarily mean unsafe. Airlines operating into Kai Tak required additional training. Captains practiced the approach repeatedly in advanced flight simulators before flying it for real. Strict weather limits were enforced. If conditions became unsafe, flights diverted to other airports. Every landing followed procedures refined over decades. That's why, despite its intimidating reputation, millions of passengers landed safely here. The airport wasn't reckless. It was engineered around an incredibly difficult environment. And that distinction matters. But there was one factor no engineer could control: the weather. Hong Kong sits in a region frequently affected by tropical storms and powerful seasonal winds. Crosswinds could push even the largest aircraft sideways during the final seconds of landing. Pilots often described the sensation as flying on the edge of control. Passengers sometimes watched the runway disappear from view as the aircraft banked sharply into the wind. Then, just before touchdown, the nose swung back toward the centerline. From inside the cabin, it could feel chaotic. Inside the cockpit, it was a carefully practiced maneuver. Even so, not every landing went perfectly. Several aircraft overran runways, suffered hard landings, or were damaged by severe weather over Kai Tak's operational history. Each incident reinforced the airport's reputation, not because it was poorly designed, but because it demanded absolute precision. By the early 1990s, one question had become impossible to ignore. Could Kai Tak continue operating safely as aircraft grew larger and Hong Kong became even more crowded? Engineers, pilots, and government officials all reached the same conclusion. The airport had reached its limits. But closing Kai Tak wouldn't just mean shutting down a runway. It would mean replacing one of the world's busiest international airports without bringing Hong Kong to a standstill. How do you move an entire airport? That challenge would become one of the most ambitious engineering projects in aviation history. By the early 1990s, the question was no longer whether Kai Tak was iconic. The question was whether it could meet the demands of the future. Passenger numbers continued to rise. Aircraft were becoming larger. Hong Kong's skyline kept growing around the airport. There was almost no room left to expand. Engineers studied every option. Extend the runway? Impossible. Move the city? Unrealistic. Build higher? Unsafe. The only practical solution was the most expensive one. Build an entirely new airport. Not beside Kai Tak, but on reclaimed land several kilometers away at Checkerboard Approach. It would become one of the largest airport construction projects ever undertaken. For thousands of aviation enthusiasts, it wasn't just another day. It was the end of an era. People lined rooftops, harbors filled with boats. Television stations broadcast the event live. The final scheduled arrival, a Cathay Pacific Airbus A340, touched down just before midnight. Minutes later, the final departure rolled down runway 13. As its landing lights disappeared into the night, Kai Tak Airport closed forever. An airport that had connected Hong Kong to the world for more than 7 decades, had completed its final flight. Today, the roar of jet engines is gone. The runway still exists, but it no longer welcomes commercial aircraft. Instead, parts of the former airport have been transformed into public parks, residential developments, a cruise terminal, and new cultural facilities. If you visit today, it's difficult to imagine that Boeing 747s once thundered overhead every few minutes. Only a few reminders remain: a section of the old runway, historic markers, and countless photographs that captured one of aviation's most unforgettable airports. Kai Tak wasn't famous because it was reckless. It was famous because it demanded excellence, tested skill, discipline, and judgment. Pilots who earned the qualification to fly there often described it as a milestone in their careers. Not because they survived it, but because mastering Kai Tak meant mastering one of commercial aviation's most demanding approaches. Today, flight simulators around the world still recreate the checkerboard approach, not as a stunt, but as a reminder of an extraordinary chapter in aviation history. Every airport tells a story. Some are remembered for innovation, others for tragedy. Kai-Tak is remembered for something different. It proved that extraordinary challenges can be overcome through engineering, training, and precision. For more than 70 years, millions of passengers landed safely in one of the most difficult urban environments ever used for commercial aviation. What looked impossible from a passenger's window became routine for crews who respected the procedure and never underestimated the approach. That is why Kai-Tak remains one of the most celebrated airports in aviation history. Some airports fade quietly into history. Kai-Tak never will. Long after its final runway fell silent, its legacy continues in every documentary, every flight simulator, and every pilot who remembers what it was like to make that final turn toward runway 13. The airport may be gone, but its story still flies. If you enjoyed this investigation and want more true stories about aviation mysteries, legendary airports, and remarkable flights, subscribe and join me on the next journey. Because sometimes, the greatest stories in aviation aren't about the planes. They're about the places that challenged them.